Hey everybody, it's your host Costa G. Today's guest is Dan Porta. Dan is a bit of a unique guest to the podcast in that he is the senior corporate recruiter at TechSmith Corp here in East Lansing. Dan has a ton of experience in reviewing job applications and the hiring process, and he took some time to share his knowledge with us. So stay tuned for a great episode. So Dan, let's talk a little bit about, to start, your background basically from undergrad and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, so, I went to school at Saginaw Valley State University. No clue what I wanted to go into. Ended up being a communications major, I think large in part because that was like the easiest major. Graduated with no real direction. Graduated in 2010. And, I was still waiting tables for like 2 months after graduation just because it was still fresh after the recession. And with having a major that was so broad, nobody was looking to hire a communications major, right? They were looking for either experience, right? Or somebody who had a more pigeonhole type of degree, right? So, which I think a lot of students find themselves in. So I took the first opportunity that I had, which was at a company called Maxim, and Maxim Home Care Solutions or Healthcare Solutions. And I had to move from Saginaw out to Lansing. No family, friends, or anything like that out here in the Lansing area. Moved out here, with my wife, bought a house, and then 10 months after working that job, and that job was a hustle. I was, so basically we were staffing, hiring home care nurses and patient care techs and CNAs to go work extended hours. So it wasn't just like a visit. It was like they would go into a patient's home for 8, 10, 16 hours, 16-hour shifts, and take care of patients, primarily pediatric patients, on some form of life support. And so we had to hire and staff and do the scheduling and the billing and the payroll and all that stuff. And for a while, I was driving from Saginaw to Lansing, an hour and a half commute. I started at 7:15 and I got done at 6. 2 days a week, I was there till 8, and I was on call 24/7. The job was miserable. I did not enjoy it whatsoever. But 10 months in, I got laid off. So, the office closed and I was laid off. And so for the next 2 months, I cleaned cars, mowed lawns. I even tried a stint at a dealership. It was a super shady dealership. They're not open anymore. I applied as like their online marketing and advertising specialist. And then when I got there day one after I was hired, they're like, you're actually going to be a fully commissioned salesperson. And I was like, that is not what I want to do. But they promised me a $500 stipend for the 2 weeks that I was training. And then after that, I'd go full commission. So I totally just did the training. And then after 2 weeks, they like brought us into the office and they're like, so how do you see your future here? And I was like, I don't. Like, I'm looking elsewhere, man. This is not what I wanted to do. And there's no shame in being a car salesman. You can make a great living in that. I didn't like the place I was at. It was super shady. In the morning, we'd have to go blow up the tires and like jump start the cars that we were then going to try to sell to somebody. Yeah. Like, I did not enjoy it at all. After that, I landed a job doing recruiting and staffing at a manufacturer here in the Lansing area called Multi-Packaging Solutions. So they were a print shop, so printing pharmaceutical labels, cartons, and stuff like that. And so I hired anything from the manufacturing technicians to like print technicians. And that's a really interesting industry because it's like an older industry, and there's no schooling for it. It's just through apprenticeships. So it's really difficult to find the talent there. But I'd also hire finance people. I'd hire IT individuals, anything that the company needed. There was about 800 employees in total, and they had a couple different locations. After that, a year and a half there, I was contacted by a recruiter on LinkedIn because I had a LinkedIn and it was robust and so on and so forth. And out of the blue, I was contacted by a recruiter out of Pennsylvania. Didn't know this person. He said, hey, we've got an opportunity. at Dark Container Corporation in Mason. Is that something you'd be interested in? And I said, yeah, so I got an interview over there. It was closer to home, better money, great organization. And so I ended up going over to Dark Container. I wasn't even looking, but I'm really glad that I had a LinkedIn profile up to date.
Mm-hmm.
And then I spent 3.5, 4 years, something like that, at Dark Container. Cool company. They own Solo Cup. If you don't know Dark Container, the headquarters is here in just outside of Lansing, Michigan, and they own Solo Cup. They've got 40-something locations. They're in 4 continents. A huge organization. And I hired engineers there. I hired finance, marketing, sales, logistics, IT, everything there. Had a great opportunity there. And then I went back into healthcare and I worked at Sparrow Health System, which is the largest private employer here in the Lansing area. I worked there for 3 years, hiring kind of everything again. But that was more in the medical field. So respiratory therapists, critical care, ICU nurses, also the IT, different things like that. Spent about 3 years there. I heard about an opening at TechSmith. I wasn't extremely happy being in the healthcare field. It's brutal. And I obviously was not a frontline worker, but just that industry, it can chew you up and spit you out. So I commend anybody working in that industry. Opportunity at TechSmith. I knew somebody. I worked with somebody whose husband, Jason Hatch, worked at TechSmith. And so, I interviewed on Halloween and then in 2018. And then I was called back for another interview, and that was an all-day interview. I went from 9 to 4:30. I had an hour-long presentation that I had to do. I met with just about every senior leader at TechSmith, and for some reason, unbeknownst to me, they decided to go with me. They offered me the job, and I've been here ever since, and I'm super happy and thrilled about it. And here I'm the only recruiter for TechSmith. We're about 285 employees, 30-year-old company. And so I'm the single recruiter, so I'm the best and the worst recruiter here at TechSmith. And so I hire all areas in the organization. So, and I also lead the strategy of what we're doing, whether that be new projects we're working on or out in the community, out at colleges, our relationships with different colleges and universities across the Midwest. So.
Yeah, so it seems like you've had kind of a winding path to get to where you are. It wasn't necessarily straightforward, coming out of college, get hired, stay there for 30 plus years or 20 plus years, whatever, which is really interesting. So I want to ask you, when you got that job with the manufacturer in Lansing, that was sort of, I would say, your first sort of hiring experience, where you were, interviewing candidates, that sort of thing. What specifically about the sort of HR recruitment space interested you and made you kind of stay in that space, although you went to different employers?
Yeah. And the hiring started at Maxim, but it wasn't as much there. You're right. The more corporate recruiters did start at Multi-Packaging Solutions. I really enjoyed it because you get to give somebody an opportunity to better themselves.
Okay.
I always joke around that as a recruiter, I'm HR light. Right. So I don't deal with payroll a lot of times. I don't deal with benefits, employee or personnel issues or leaves or anything along those lines. I'm the hire, not the fire. Right. So people are happy to get a call from me most of the time. I do have to do the role too of letting people know that they didn't get the job, but I see that as an opportunity to coach people up. And yeah, I really enjoy it because people are genuinely really happy to hear from me. I'm excited. If somebody is willing to put in the effort to prepare for an interview and get the job, I'm super excited for them, for the organization, and I have a direct impact on the success of an organization, right? So organization is just a series of individuals making the right moves, working together as a team, and I get to play a big role.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a lot more of the personal development side, sort of making sure the company has the best people available for the job.
Yeah, and to be honest, when I graduated, I didn't even know what HR was. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what they did. I just took the opportunity that was presented in front of me. I can't say it's what I wanted to do as a kid or anything like that, but I really enjoy it. I'm just very, very fortunate that what I fell into was something that I enjoyed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, it is the development of people. It's especially like students at universities going in doing mock interviews or resume prep sessions or just at career fairs, helping people to land that job that they've been working really hard at.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure you would say that your personal career experiences probably help you with that in telling students like, hey, it might not always be a straight path. You might have to take a few, bends in the road. So I want to sort of switch gears a little bit and ask specifically about TechSmith and how you guys have handled the more remote environment we've had for the past year almost coming up on, and how have you personally handled that? Speaking of personal development.
Right. Yeah. So, TechSmith, we're a software development company, and so we don't have a need to be physically in the office. Prior to going remote, we had about 5 to 10% of our total employees that were already full-time remote. When in 2019, that winter in January, February, March, we had a couple of snow days, and so our IT team decided, hey, let's try to better prepare for these snow days in the future. Let's kind of stress the system and see if everybody can work from home for a day. We didn't know a pandemic was coming, right? So we were pretty fortunate, I guess, good strategy on our IT leaders and our IT front lines to do that, to test that out. So in October of 2018 or 2019, everybody worked from home. We wanted to see, could everybody connect and so on and so forth. And then from there, they kind of built up a strategy in case that ever happened, unbeknownst that the following year in March, just 5 months later, that was a thing. It was going to happen. So we moved pretty seamlessly to remote. Even the positions that we thought would be more difficult, like customer service, tech support, IT, we thought that those would be a little bit more difficult, and they each individually had their own challenges. But we moved remote pretty seamlessly. We're still remote today. Back in May of 2020, our senior leadership team said, "Hey, we don't have a need to be in the office. We're not in a rush to be back in the office. So, don't plan on it until January 1st. They were able to provide us with the resources that we need to be remote, from kind of like setting up our own offices, and still to this day, as of January 21st, we're not in the office. We don't have a plan to go back into the office. We actually, prior to the pandemic happening, we were looking at building a new building. We've been leasing buildings for 34 years, right? Our entire time as an organization here in the East Lansing and Okemos area. And so we made the decision to build a new facility, new headquarters, and we met with architects and everything like that. And then the pandemic happened, and that really shifted, what is that building going to look like? When we were accommodating 90 to 95% of our employees being in the office, and now we found that we don't have to be in the office. Now, I think TechSmith is really unique in the fact that people really enjoy being in the office, right? We've got an amazing environment, amazing culture, and just there's really interesting people to share a cup of coffee with. We have amazing perks of free food and stuff like that. So people genuinely enjoy being in the office. So, our senior leadership said, okay, well, let's kind of check the pulse with our employees to see what are they wanting the future of their work to look like. And, so they surveyed everybody, and the majority of people said, I would like to be in the office a little bit, like not 5 days a week, but maybe 3 or 2, just to have that interaction with other people, because there's so much innovation and clarity and collaboration that happens around the water cooler. When people who typically don't work together start talking about the projects they're working on, and they can bring their own experiences and lend that to somebody else, and we don't want to miss out on that. So, and I can say all this because there's been a press release. We are still moving forward with the headquarters. We don't have a date of when we're going to open that up, or like when the build will be complete. We're just moving down the road to East Lansing. But I think we won't be working in the office 5 days a week anymore. It's going to be much more of that hybrid of, maybe 2 days in the office or 3 days in the office, and the rest of the time at home. And I think that'll be really good. I think it presents its own challenges, right, for people and their different roles and how they do that, but it provides the flexibility for people to manage their home life. Home life looks a lot different right
Yeah.
now. What's been good is that TechSmith has been understanding about that. We hold, I think every other week, we hold like roundtables, like, hey, talk to me about like what's the challenges that you're facing as an employee of TechSmith and a mother or a father or a spouse or somebody who doesn't live with anybody, right? That isolation, how come, and then the question is, how can we help? And TechSmith has been helpful in that regard, to do different things, whether that is, we've done some events in a super safe, socially distanced way. They rented out Lugnut Stadium to play a movie. And in the entire stadium, we only allowed 100 people, right? So like there's plenty of room between you and anybody else, but that I think really helped people to have a little bit of normalcy, have people who are in isolation to be able to see other faces and so on and so forth. They've still been doing free food Fridays once in a while, maybe about twice a month, where we can select what we want from a menu and then drive up to campus and pick up food, and again, in a safe manner. And that's been really nice. So like with us being remote, they tried to keep a little bit of that normalcy. We've also done things like virtual yoga, virtual meditation, different things like that, so that we can still come together. Because being in a remote environment, what we've learned, and we're not perfect at it, we are far from it. We're still learning how to onboard people effectively. That's a big challenge, how to train them, and also how to have new employees assimilate and contribute to a culture, right? We think that it's not about a culture fit, it's about like a culture add. And so if you can't witness the culture because you're kind of at home in your basement office like I am, and you've never been on campus, how do you know how to contribute to the culture? So we're still working on things like that. But they've been really awesome, really accommodating, and they're willing to say, hey, we need help, employees, like, help us help you. How can we make this better for you? What opportunities can we give to you? How can we train you better? And so we're learning it. For me personally, it's been interesting. I enjoy being on campus. I also enjoy being home. Each of them have their own challenges. Being at home, I've got 2 kiddos, 2 crazy kids, age 7 and 3, and that's something where, and you might hear them on the podcast because they could bust in that door at any point in time.
We've had a few guests actually have some interruptions, and I'm doing
absolutely. It happens, and that's something that we tell people who are interviewing at TechSmith, like, hey, something's going to happen. It's just Murphy's Law. And when it happens, it's okay. And that's the same thing. And I tell my wife this too. If I'm not doing an interview, most of the time, even if I'm meeting with our CEO and my kid busts in, they don't care. They understand it's the new norm. So that assimilation, not to use that word again, right? But like of bridging your home life to your work life is interesting. And at least at TechSmith, it's been really understanding. It's actually been like celebrated. We see each other's cats, and now we know each other's cat's name and stuff like that. And it's really kind of cool to be able to see that, and that we're human, that everybody we work with is human, and they're also dealing with their own challenges. And our interviewers get to see that too. The interview process looks a lot different with it all being virtual, because our interview process is typically like a phone screen and then an interview, like 90 minutes with a panel. And then the last step is kind of like a half day or all day interview where a candidate's going to meet with a lot of different leaders and stakeholders and so on and so forth, so that they can get a really good understanding of who TechSmith is and whether or not they want to spend the majority of their waking hours here. And that's a lot different when they're sitting in their basement, right? Or in their home versus coming on site. They don't get to see how everybody just kind of like interacts. So that's been different, but we've been super flexible with it. I think that's pretty smooth. Different doesn't mean bad. It's been bumpy, but it's pretty smooth now. We've got it ironed out. People understand it. They understand what can happen during an interview. It's the training and stuff like that I think is a lot different, and we're still working on that. So personally, it's been fun though. COVID's impacted us all differently. We've had a tough year in this household with some loss and stuff like that, but from a working remote standpoint, it's been good. I couldn't imagine anything better than what we've experienced so far, and we're very fortunate. At TechSmith, nobody's been laid off or anything like that. It's been very fortunate. We're doing very well from a business standpoint. There's a higher demand for our products. So I can't say that enough that we've been fortunate.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to stay in this same sort of vein and ask, what have your experiences been as a recruiter? So we talked to a lot of students about like, how have you tried to work to have that same sort of networking as like, if we were in person, going to career fairs, going to interviews, job offers and that sort of thing. I want to ask about the other side of that for you as a recruiter. What has your experience been? What things have you found that have worked? What haven't worked, or what hasn't worked rather? And I also want to ask, what's the strangest experience you've had?
So I would say, like, as a recruiter in a remote environment, what's changed a lot. So like the interviewing is easy. Like we iron that out. It's just going to be through Zoom or Teams or whatever. But it's the on-campus interaction that we don't get anymore, because now that's very much facilitated through different mediums like Handshake, Career Fair Plus, etc. And I think that's a challenge. And I would be lying if I didn't say I missed the in-person career fairs, because when you put 1,000 students in a room with 500 employers, there's a buzz, there's an energy, so on and so forth. And with us being virtual, we have to be so much more intentional, right, to reach out to students. Now, there's also a couple of positives, is that we can attend more events. We can have a broader reach of the events in which we attend. Also, we send not just myself to career fairs, we send other individuals that work at TechSmith as well. And the volunteerism for people being willing to attend these events has skyrocketed, even to our CEO, Wendy Hamilton, attending a career fair for like 4 or 6 hours, right? And she was meeting with any student that signed up to meet with her. Like, that's an amazing opportunity that students have, is that I think now they're meeting with people that they wouldn't have met with before, because of geography, the drive time, so on and so forth. We're attending more events than we have before, because again, we have to be super intentional. So yeah, I think that those are some positives, some negatives to, a recruiter in today's world and how we interact with talent. Also LinkedIn, our presence on LinkedIn and chatting with people there has been a lot more. We've been attending, more like mock interviews and resume workshops and stuff like that. Again, because we have to be intentional getting in front of students. At TechSmith, we don't have this huge international brand. We're not Amazon, we're not Ford, GM, GE, etc. So, the challenge that we've always had is telling our story. Once we have an opportunity to have some dialogue and tell people who we are, because I think we honestly are the best hidden gem here in the mid-Michigan area as far as an employer goes. But yeah, you're not going to find us on a billboard. It's that face-to-face interaction. So the intentionality has had to go up significantly Now, what's the strangest experience that I've had? Yeah, there's been a ton of bombardments from kids, cats, everything like that. I was talking to a recruiter for an MSU student panel thing we were doing, and they said, I'm going to use their example. They were on an interview with somebody, and while they were on the interview, this person's shed outside caught on fire somehow.
Wow.
And so the person was like clearly super frantic, and the interviewer is like, didn't know why, right? Because it's not like the person sat back down and was like, hey guys, I just want to make you aware that my shed's on fire. Is there any chance that we could reschedule? Basically the recruiter had said like, yeah, this person just dropped off the call, like literally like left the screen blank for like a super extended period of time, to where all the employer reps jumped off of the call because they're like, this person just ran out of the room and didn't come back, which I couldn't imagine seeing that. And they were super understanding once the candidate got back to them. But yeah, that's the world we live in. Not everybody's shed's going to go up in flames, right? But when that kind of emergency happens and you're in the home, you got to take action on it, right? And the interview kind of takes a back seat to that, and that I think is a big thing that we've learned. At TechSmith, we've always had super good flexibility with people's work-life balance. I think that's why our software engineers stay here so long. They stay like 7-8 years in comparison to like 18 months, which is the industry average, because they have good work-life balance. They're treated well, but a lot of companies, it's always been, hey, your loyalty and your time and your priority needs to be us first, and everything else can come second. And I think now that employers are seeing that that's not the case, right. That they have fires at home as well that are more important than the report they're working on, that hopefully you'll start to see better work-life balance at companies that haven't had that in the past.
Yeah, literal fires and figurative fires.
Literal fires, yeah. Once I heard that, I was like, my stories are null and void in comparison. That's insane.
Now, did they ever figure out why the shed caught fire? Or
yeah, he said that it was because I asked. That was the first thing that came to my mind too. How does a shed just midday, in wintertime catch fire? Because he said it just happened recently. He was like, apparently the power line just fell. I don't know if it was the weight or what happened, but yeah, it fell in the shed and boom, up in flame. Because in a shed, that's where you keep like your gasoline, your oil, Yeah, the candidate said it went from 0 to 60 really fast. And everything was fine with the house, and nothing happened, nobody was injured. But yeah, that shed, talk about dealing with a fire at work. That does not compare.
Yeah, that's wild. That's definitely the craziest story I've ever heard in terms of
I couldn't imagine
being
that.
on an interview and that sort of thing. But
what would you do, right? Again, I think the candidate made the right call. It's not like he's gonna walk all the way back in his house after he sees his shed on fire and be like, hold on, let me not call 911 first. Let me go talk to the interviewers. No, you're gonna do what you gotta do. So it's just crazy.
So let's flip to the other side now. Let's talk about what have you noticed that students are doing in this remote environment to sort of improve their chances or make them more successful when they're interviewing with jobs or going through that recruiting process. You mentioned in the last question that you as a recruiter have to be more intentional about reaching out. Do you think that works both ways? For students, are you seeing them sort of be more direct in reaching out for opportunities?
100%, right? There's a saying of you got to grease the squeaky wheel, right? Whatever is barking the loudest, you got to attend to that. And I think there's some truth to that. And there's a balancing act with that. You don't want to be a candidate that's pestering recruiters, but you can engage and initiate effective dialogue with a recruiter or hiring manager or network connection. So I think that the intentionality has gone up, but a lot of the basics are still just as relevant of preparing, taking the time to write your resume, having people review your resume, multiple iterations of it, customizing your resume to the company that you're talking to. I think there's challenges with this remote world and how students can get the next internship or job. But there's also some perks too. Like if you're in person in a career fair, I think about this, like usually I see so many students that come up, they've got, their dad's, laptop case that's leather. It looks nice with their pad folio. They're holding a bunch of swag and pens and cups and mugs and shirts. And then they're trying to give us a resume and they drop everything, right, that they're holding on to. They're fumbling. The resume is creased, crinkled. They don't have to worry about that, right? Also, a lot of times in-person career fairs, you walk past a career fair booth and you didn't do the research on the company. They didn't appeal to you, but now that you're seeing them in person and you're seeing this buzz about them, you walk up there, right? And now you have no previous knowledge of them, so you're already unprepared. But here in the virtual world, like you've got Google right there, right? Like it's boom, you've got your resume right there. You don't have to fumble for it. You can take your notes. You can take, while you're chatting with somebody or 2 seconds afterwards, you can go hop on LinkedIn and add them. Like a lot of recruiters, if you say during your time with them, hey, is it cool if I add you on LinkedIn? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like that's why we have it. You can do all of that within seconds afterwards, or even while. I wouldn't recommend necessarily while you're talking to them, like, hold on, let me not look at you. But that's a huge advantage. You can be instantly prepared from a employer research perspective that you can go and talk about, like, hey, I was on your website and I saw that you guys are working on X, Y, and Z, or, you guys have a huge global reach, or you've got a new product, or, you're hiring for this. All of that stuff is right at your fingertips now. And you don't have to fumble for it or prep the night before. So I think that that's like an absolutely huge advantage. I think one thing that I've noticed, if I can be completely transparent, I hated elevator pitches in person. They were super awkward. Now, like once in a while, like maybe once a career fair, I'd have a kid who was, a guy or a woman who was really effective with their elevator pitch, right? It wasn't awkward, because I've had students like, basically when a student would walk up to me at a career fair booth, I'd just say like, hey, how are you, man? How's the day going? And they'd be like, can I tell you my elevator pitch? And I'd be like, I guess, but like, they didn't know segues, right? What's cool about, or what I find really valuable now, most of the career fair platforms that I've seen, when you're doing these 10-minute sessions, that 10 minutes go by really, really quick. Now I've got your resume up in front of me. Hopefully you have my company's website up in front of you. You don't have to like, try and talk to me for 30 minutes about all your experience. I've got it right there. But with an effective elevator pitch, I can gain so much more information that isn't on your resume. And I find it more relevant today because we only have 10 minutes, right? That you have to kind of spew out information. Now, I still think you have to like practice it and so on and so forth. But that's been a big difference that I did not see coming in these virtual career fairs, that like having an effective elevator pitch would be something that I value, because they're so awkward in person. So yeah, I think that, again, preparedness, practice, those things remain king, right? If you are not prepared, if you didn't practice, you're not going to get the job. In hiring, we have a saying that like, the most qualified candidate's going to get hired. And that's true to an extent. That's always our goal, is the most qualified candidate gets the job. But if the most qualified candidate does not present themselves well as the most qualified candidate, then they're not going to get the job. Right. Like they could have the most degrees, certifications, accolades, best internship, so on and so forth. But if they completely bomb when it's game time to talk to a recruiter or a hiring manager, and they don't convey their expertise, then we're going to move on to the next person. Right. The one thing that you can't control, there's many things you can't control, right? A lot of times it's the timing of when a job gets posted. Just to give like the listeners some perspective, TechSmith, small company here in mid-Michigan, great company, but not a lot of people know of us.
Mm-hmm.
Within like a month, I think last year we had 600 applications for a software engineering internship.
Wow.
Right? Can you imagine what Amazon's getting, or
Yeah.
Ford,
Right.
right? Or Play Moran, or any of these national, international names, how many they're getting per hour? Like 600 is nothing. Timing is hugely important when applying to jobs. So you can't necessarily control that. You can't control that you're going to be the best qualified candidate for the job, right? You can control one thing, and that's being the most prepared. I as a recruiter, right, 10 years in this game, that means that I've got over 10,000 hours, right? According to that, I'm an expert at this, right? If I go and interview somewhere, I easily will spend 5 hours prepping. That's doing the research on the company. I go to Google and I print off a list of 30 most asked interview questions, and I handwrite my response. Maybe because I'm like old school, right? Type it out. I don't care how you do it. Do it on your phone. But like, I write out those responses, and my goal is not to memorize them verbatim. It's to get familiar with the story that I'm going to tell. Right? And just reading it over and over and over again. I also will print off, top 10 top 10 questions every interviewer should ask. And I bring that with me and I practice them, when I first started off, I would record myself. I would do it in the mirror, and if you think you don't need to, I was a communication major and I did not realize that I sounded quiet as a mouse when I would interview. I didn't know that, right? And what does that mean? Well, I probably didn't come across as very confident or competent, right? They couldn't hear me. They couldn't hear my responses. I also probably didn't come across as passionate and enthusiastic, right? Because they couldn't hear me. Thank God I took the time, even though I felt like a dummy, right? Recording myself and listening to myself. Nobody likes to do that. But I'm glad that I did, so that I could sound more competent, confident, enthusiastic and passionate about the job that I was interviewing for. You have all of these tools in your phone, right? To be able to do that and become the best prepared person. That's the one thing you can control. You might not be the most qualified person, but you can be the most prepared. And like that analogy works in everything in life, right? So like, if you've ever played sports, you're not just going to show up to the game, right? Never having practiced with your teammates and just kick butt, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you play an instrument, you're not going to never have practiced that song and then go to the concert and everybody's going to clap. No, you're going to sound like crap, right? Yeah. And so like, so many times students don't take that methodology and apply it to this. And guess what? When you show up and you come to an interview and you haven't practiced, if I'm being honest with you, you sound like crap, right? You don't know what you're talking about because you didn't practice. It's the same principle. Be prepared, practice, have somebody else listen to your interview. One of the biggest things I would say is go plug into your career services at your college, right? I work heavily with the engineering one at MSU. I can say that they are top of the line. Best career services that I've ever worked with at any college and university. I say every time I talk to them, I'm dead serious. Now, I haven't worked with the business ones in Broad, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say you might adjust that once you talk to them. They're pretty good as well.
But I'm gonna
say, argue on their behalf.
Yeah, if they're even half as good as engineering, they're amazing, right? Plug into them. These people have hundreds of contacts at different organizations, right? They will do a mock interview with you. They will redo your resume for you. That's their job. That's what they're paid to do. And they're very good at it because they have helped thousands of students over the years to land their job. Why would it be any different with you? Now, it might be uncomfortable, right? Like practicing in front of another person. So is playing an instrument in front of another person, right? So is running that play for the first time. You're going to screw up. It's going to look ugly, right? And that's okay. It's part of the process. If you just spent $100,000 on your education in 4 years, 4.5, 5 years, but you're not going to spend 4 hours prepping for game time, you missed the boat, bud. And so me, 10 years in the game, if I have to spend 5 hours and this is your first time doing it, I'm going to recommend you spend at least double, prepping for your interview. It's not a secret. All of these articles are out there to help you to do that. Career services are out there to help you to do that. There's podcasts like this that can help you to get better at what you're doing. Just plug it in, take the time, put down the PlayStation, right? Like stop Netflixing just for a little bit, enough to land that job, because somebody's going to get it. And the person who gets it is simply the most prepared.
Absolutely. So I know, obviously we've covered a ton in this podcast, and I think we've provided a lot of value for people who are looking for jobs. I want to give the last little bit here to you. I know you're super active on LinkedIn. We're connected, and I see you posted on there all the time, liking different posts, all that sort of thing. I want to give the last part to you to give any other tips that we haven't covered that you wanted to cover about anything from resumes, interviewing, networking, LinkedIn, anything like that, and specifically any sort of resources that we can direct our listeners to.
Yeah. And first, let me say thanks for having me on. I love doing this.
Absolutely.
Anybody who wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, please do. If you've got questions, shoot me an email. Like this is my job, and this is also my passion. I might not be the quickest to respond to you because we've got a lot of hiring going on, but I'll get back to you. So please do that. I would say, yes, go build a LinkedIn. If you don't have any connections, let me be your first, that's cool. But if you're going to have a LinkedIn, spend time on it, right? Like, I'm sorry, unless you're an influencer, Instagram, TikTok ain't making you money, right? But LinkedIn actually could. And the cool thing with LinkedIn is, like, if you're a finance major or you're a business major, you're a logistics major, you can go connect with anybody that is a finance major, and they're going to accept it because they get it, right? That's the cool thing about networking. It's not like you had to, or the cool thing about networking on LinkedIn, it's not like you guys had to go hang out at a party and now you guys can be like Instagram. You don't have to know these people intimately at all. They just want to connect with you as well, just as much as you want to connect with them. The advice that I always give people, and this applies to writing your resume, this applies to interviewing, phone interviewing, in-person interviewing. It's an analogy, and it's because I worked so long in the food industry and I love food. I guess I'll ask you, Costa, do you like eating out at restaurants?
Oh, of course.
Cool. What's your favorite restaurant here in the Lansing area?
Probably Spartan Hall of Fame.
Spartan Hall of Fame. What would you get if you went there today?
Oh, chicken wings, definitely. Their chicken wings are pretty solid.
Chicken wings and maybe some fries or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, cool. You ordered 12 chicken wings and fries. If I brought out a salad and soup and said, here's your order, would you be happy?
No, absolutely not.
No, absolutely not. So that's the same principle when it comes to hiring, right? So when I, as a recruiter, I post a job on our website, think of that as our food order, right? Here's the job. This is the person that I want. Here's my chicken wings and French fries, right? If you got chicken wings and French fries, please apply. Right. And when you apply with a resume that looks like a salad, and then you're like, I don't know why they didn't pick me. It's because you didn't give us what we wanted, right? So there is so much in a job posting. It's the simple things, right? Now, you have to do this with a certain level of integrity, right? But it's wordsmithing. Like if you apply for a job and you look at the job posting, you look at the company values, and they say they value, someone being punctual, right? And you say, like, on your resume, hey, I'm really responsible. Well, those are kind of synonyms for one another, right? Like, how about we use the word that they asked for, right? I'm punctual. Right? Now, if they say, hey, I'm looking for 5 years of experience in this, and you don't have it, well, you have to do an integrity check, right? You simply don't have it. Now, I would say still shoot your shot, but don't count on it, right? A lot of the times as a recruiter, we will pull up the job posting. This is a trick. We're not anything special. We keep it really basic in hiring. We pull up the job posting and we pull up your resume, and we literally go through and say, all right, does this person have this? Does this person have this? But what gets me excited is when that person is speaking our language, speaking our values, our mission. Their resume looks like the answer to our job posting, right? So, and that's the same thing when you go in to interview with somebody. If you see that they value somebody who's detail oriented, and you go into the interview, and you're always asked those same set of questions of like, hey, tell me a strength of yours. And, you're like, oh, well, I always tell people that, I work great on a team. Okay, well, I don't think you only have one strength. I think you probably have a ton of strengths. How about you tell them one of your strengths that they're actually interested in hearing?
Right.
And they already told you what strength they're interested in hearing. It's listed in the job description, or it's listed on the website, and it's attention to detail. Now, me, I don't have attention to detail, so I'm not going to do that one, right? There's that certain level of integrity that you have to have, but basically throughout the process, man, just give them the chicken wing and fries. That's all they're asking for. And if you're giving them something different, don't be upset if you don't get the job. And just the last bit of advice is try not to get too discouraged. If you're working with the career services, if you are prepping and preparing and customizing your resumes, and you've got the LinkedIn and you're networking, just be patient. You will get rejected. Learn from each rejection that you get. Just because I'm 10 years in and I prep doesn't mean I land every job that I interview for. Right? Doesn't mean that I even get called for every interview, because sometimes I was the 1,500th applicant to apply. They're already interviewing people. By the time that I apply, they're ready to make a decision, right? So sometimes it's timing. Also, sometimes it's that maybe, you were super prepared, but so was your competition, right? And they were more qualified, or they hired somebody internal. Don't take it personal, right? Sometimes you apply for a position you're super excited for, and I have to be honest with you, the recruiter never even saw your resume. Right. Because you were the 200th applicant. I never looked at your resume, and you're going to be like, they don't like me, they hate me. Dude, I don't even know your name. I didn't even see your resume, if I'm being honest with you, right? So, don't take it personal. Just get good at your craft, and it's a matter of time before you get that job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of our listeners can learn from your story as well, is that you didn't necessarily have a straight path to get to where you were today. You had to kind of sort of maneuver your way, and then now you found a position that you really enjoy and that you're passionate about. So I think they can learn from your story. So Dan, I want to thank you. This is awesome. I think all of our listeners can definitely benefit from this, whether they're looking for an internship job, maybe they're a little bit experienced and they want to find a new spot. But I want to thank you. This was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I'm super, super grateful that you reached out, Costa. Again, to any of the listeners, if you guys have more questions, hit me up on LinkedIn.
Yeah, we'll link you down in our show notes. We'll link your LinkedIn profile down there. So Anybody who's interested in connecting with Dan can do so. Thanks for listening, everybody.
If you liked what you just heard, please like, comment, and share. This is Vincent Pacillo, producer of the MSUwma podcast. MSUwma, or Michigan State University Wealth Management Association, is a student organization part of the Eli Broad College of Business, located in East Lansing, Michigan. Our mission is to inspire and educate the next generation of financial planners. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please check out our channel on all platforms such as Spotify and Apple Podcast. And check out our social media at MSUwma and MSUwma.com.